guys, welcome back to the Brazilian Expat. I hope you're all doing fantastic as usual. Before I kick off this video, I really want to thank all of my subscribers and of course of you who have tuned into my latest episode. Welcoming me back after, quite a while of absence of me just basically disappearing off the planet. Well, I didn't actually disappear, but I've been busy with a lot of things here at the bed and breakfast which I currently own and run here in the northeast of Brazil, and there's just been a lot of changes going on, and not only that, it's been actually quite busy, so there is a reason for it, and I want to come into a little bit more into detail about that in another episode. However, on this episode I want to answer a few questions that a lot of you have asked me, and that is, what are the current requirements for obtaining a permanent visa here in Brazil? And before I answer that question, I just want to point out a few things that as a tourist or just as a regular visitor to Brazil, you are entitled to up to 180 days per year that you can actually stay in Brazil. So you have to ask yourself the question, do I really need a permanent visa? Those 180 days, they are not consecutive days. I mean, as soon as you enter Brazil, you automatically get 90 days that you are allowed to stay in the country. After 90 days, when you leave Brazil, you can come back again and then you can stay for another 90 days. However, there are ways around this. After 90 days, you can go into the federal police station and register and ask for an additional 90 days without actually leaving the country. It really depends on, when you go, where you are, and it's kind of like a lottery. Sometimes, most of the time, it's really no problem. You can get your passport stamped and you get an additional 90 days. Sometimes it might be refused. I don't really know what's the criteria behind it, what's the reason. It sounds like it's just, hit and miss if you get the extra 90 days or not. So it's nothing I would actually rely on, that you automatically get the extra 90 days if you go to the federal police, but at least have this in mind that as a tourist, as a visitor, you can come and you can stay 90 days. However, then you need to leave the country and you can come back again for an additional 90 days. So it's 180 days in total over an entire year. That's basically how it works. So with this in mind, then you should ask yourself, do I really need a permanent visa? I mean, if you want to come here and buy a holiday home, or you think that you still want to travel back sometime to your country, then maybe it's not really necessary. However, if we go into opening up a business or maybe permanent retirement here in Brazil, or you'd like to open a bank account, or any of that stuff, then of course you should consider investing in Brazil. So what are the steps and what are your options of obtaining a permanent visa? In my case, I actually started out with an investment visa, and that is something I'm gonna come into last in this video, because I just want to, point out the obvious ways to get a permanent visa here in Brazil. Now, of course, one of them is pretty obvious, that you can get, you can marry a Brazilian national, and then you are, immediately eligible for a permanent visa. It's not something I would recommend if that is your ultimate goal, just to get a permanent visa, to find a girl and marry, because, that shouldn't be your focus, obviously, because, it can go, it can go pretty good or it can go horribly wrong, and it can be a really poor decision, and you can lose a lot of money. And another way of obtaining, of course, a permanent visa, if you actually father, or mother a child here in Brazil, which I don't really need to tell you is also, that shouldn't be your goal for coming here, getting somebody pregnant or you know, having somebody else's baby just because you want to obtain a permanent visa. You know, it's okay, common sense. I'm guessing like 99% of you already have common sense, so you know what I'm talking about. But anyways, I just want to point out, you know, the ways that obtaining a permanent visa is possible here in Brazil. Okay, so now you know at least those two options. And but I sincerely hope, you know, if you are planning ahead, you know, and really want to start up a business or retire or something like that, then for sure you should really consider the last option, which is an investor visa. So we can also talk about, there is actually one other option for those of you who are wishing to retire in Brazil, and of course this is also called a retirement visa. And it is basically eligible for anybody who is over the age of 50, who is retired and can show a fixed minimum retirement income of over $2,000 US. Now with that in mind, if you are leaving as a couple, then if one person is over the threshold of $2,000 US per month, your wife or husband or whoever you are applying together with, if that other person has over $1,000 US income per month, then that is fine, that is enough. So one of the main applicant, he has to have an annual or a monthly income of over $2,000 US, and your partner, you know, if he or she has over $1,000 US per month, then that is fine. That is okay. You don't need to have $2,000 US for each person, for each family member. The main applicant has to have or show proof that he is, you know, receiving a minimum of $2,000 US per month, and any family members after that in that party over $1,000 US. Now, and all of this, when you apply for this type of visa, of course, the first step you need to go is into your Brazilian embassy or consulate or wherever you are, and they need to start this process of requesting a permanent retirement visa. And please keep in mind also that after this visa is issued, then you need to go to Brazil. You need to arrive in Brazil within 90 days. That is your limit. Or if you're outside of that limit of, you know, if you come any later than 90 days, then your visa will be canceled and you need to start the whole process again. So basically plan ahead always, you know, when you apply for a retirement visa. And as soon as everything is in order, just remember that you have 90 days where you need to register with the Brazilian immigration authorities, okay? Just to show that, okay, I'm in Brazil, and then you can go on from there. I'm not gonna go into a lot of detail, step by step, how to do this, because for one thing, the video is gonna be way too long, and, you know, most of you are gonna lose interest because I'm gonna be babbling along. And another important thing is that all of these regulations and rules, they change all the time. You know, the procedures are different from year after year after year, you know. Usually the requirements, they stay consistent, they stay the same. It's just how you go ahead to initialize the process of getting your investment visa or your retiree visa can be a little bit different, you know. So that is a reason I don't want to go into detail right now, but Google is your friend. Go into Google, you know, search for a retirement visa or criteria or step-by-step, you know, how to do it. There are tons of articles there, and usually the Brazilian embassy, usually they have a website specifically for your country, which will also answer a lot of questions to any doubts that you may have. So just check that out, okay? What I'm gonna cover in this video is basically just the requirements and not a lot more. So let's talk about investment visa. I mean, this is probably gonna be applicable to the majority of you guys, okay? Because if you're not retiring, then an investment visa is probably going to be the way to go. So what is actually the criteria for an investment visa in 2022? Basically, in a nutshell, you need 500,000 Brazilian reais. So 500,000 Brazilian reais, that is the absolute minimum that you actually need just to be eligible for any sort of investment visa. And as I previously mentioned a couple of episodes ago of why I think now is a good idea to invest is solely just because of the the exchange rate. Luckily the Brazilian government, they have set the limit of how much you need to invest in Brazilian reais, and of course with the poor exchange rate that we currently have, or the great exchange rate, depending on how you look at it, is because the Brazilian real has been devalued so much that now you get a lot of Brazilian reais for your US dollars. And that is a reason, like I mentioned in a couple of episodes earlier, that now should be exactly the time to invest. If you are sitting on the, if you have the funds and you are thinking about moving to Brazil, then you should really start to get moving. You should start to realize your plans, because I believe the Brazilian real, it's gonna strengthen, it's gonna go up as soon as we get all this pandemic situation in order. That is the bare minimum requirements for obtaining a permanent visa, a investor visa. Now, there is no specific rules of what you need to invest in. It can be a bed and breakfast like I have, it can be a restaurant, it can be a bar, it can be like a tourist agency. Basically, you just, you need to show proof that you're actually investing, that you are spending money, and that you have plans, for a long-term investment here in Brazil. Those are the basic requirements. So like I said, I'm not going to be covering step by step on how to obtain your permanent visa, but I'm going to just shortly just tell you, what should you do when you have the funds and you're ready to go. Then it's basically the same thing, okay? You can obtain your investor visa, and not even being in Brazil. You can have never been to Brazil before, and you can still obtain an investment visa. Everything should be started and gone through your consulate. However, there are a few things that you need to keep in mind, and one of those things is you do need a contact person or an accountant in Brazil who is going to be representing you, okay? This is extremely important. And don't fall for the trap that a lot of people make, that just choose any random, accountant, You need to do your own research. You need to find somebody who is absolutely trustworthy. I cannot help you with that part, unfortunately, but you need to have somebody representing you legally here in Brazil while you go through this process of registering your company and, of course, transferring any funds. And when we're talking about transferring any funds, that is probably going to be the biggest hurdle that you're ever going to face when you're actually going to open up a business here. Because without a permanent visa here in Brazil, then it's basically impossible to open up a bank account, okay? And of course, when you start up a business, you do need a bank account. So how can you overcome this problem? Now again, we come back to the importance of having a, reliable accountant or somebody who can legally represent you in Brazil, okay? So basically, I think the first step that you really need to do is find somebody really reliable, somebody, who you can basically trust with your life, because maybe this is probably going to be your life savings, okay? And what a lot of people do is maybe they can open up a business, like it will maybe be just like it can be just like a fictional business. It can be a business of any kind. You know, it's super easy to open up a business here in Brazil. It is actually surprisingly easy, even with all the bureaucracy and everything. You know, things can seem complicated, but actually opening up a business is super straightforward and easy. So in a nutshell, what you can actually do with this accountant, or what many people do, is they either find somebody who they really trust, who they can absolutely trust with their money and their investments, and they can basically just open up like a fictional company. And when you have registered this fictional company in Brazil, then of course then you can open up a bank account which is directly linked to this new started company. Okay, so basically your accountant or whoever it is, he can basically be a shareholder and be appointed as an administrator, and you can put down anything from 1% of the shares or 0.5% of the shares. It doesn't really matter, as long as he is, you know, involved, and you can appoint him as an administrator. Now, it is extremely important that you get all of these documents, everything correctly done, because it is so easy. There are lots of sketchy people here who will obviously try to rip you off, and especially if you don't know Portuguese, it can be really dangerous, you know, in the form that you can basically lose all your investments. So please guys, you need to listen very carefully to what I'm telling you. You need to do your own research. I mean, this part is something that unfortunately I cannot help you with, because I don't have these contacts as of now, because I basically haven't needed them, you know. But this is basically what I did myself, although I did it a little bit differently. We were actually, in my case, we were actually 5 investors that went together and we put in the same sum. So there was basically 1 Brazilian and 4 other foreigners that went together with a minimum sum, which was, you know, totally different than it is today. It wasn't 500,000 Brazilian reais. It was actually only 150,000 Brazilian reais. So I gotta say, I was pretty lucky at the time when the threshold was quite low. Coming back to your accountant and the person who will represent you, unfortunately, I cannot help you with that part. This is something you really need to do a lot of research. You should travel to Brazil first. You should get a hold of somebody. You should talk around. You should, you know, scroll through the forums and try and obtain as much information as possible. And of course, try to get recommendations from other foreigners, because there's a lot of foreigners who constantly do these kind of investments. And of course, there are also a lot of foreign companies who will actually help you and aid you in exactly this part, that they can represent you and put together all the documents so that you are able to open up your bank account and you can get your funds transferred, you know, with relatively low risk. Okay, so that is probably going to be the biggest, you know, in my opinion, is going to be the biggest hurdle that you're ever going to face. Okay, again, do a lot of research, find somebody trustworthy, and he will represent you. And as soon as you get your bank account opened, then you're good to go, basically. From there, the first step, of course, like I mentioned in my previous episode, and if you haven't seen that, check out, I'll leave a card right up here in the top right hand corner, and you can click on that. I'll also leave a link to that video in the description below. That is your CPF, okay? That is your tax registration number. That is the first and most important document you will ever need, and it's all covered in that other video, okay? So that is going to be your very first step. And after you sorted out everything with the bank and everything, then of course you can go to your Brazilian consulate in whatever country where you live, and you just start up the process from there, okay? And Apart from that, your accountant or your or whoever is representing you legally in Brazil, you know, he will also start the process here in Brazil, getting all your documents in order. And there's quite a lot, actually. There's quite a lot, but usually if you do get a very good accountant, somebody representing you who knows what they're doing, then, you know, it's basically sit back and let him or her do the work and should be okay. And once you have all of your documents in order, everything is okay, you're good to go, then as with a retirement visa, you need to get your ass to Brazil, you know, and you need to actually start investing. And of course, when you have everything in order, you have your bank account, you have your fictional company set up, everything, then of course, it can be your next step is to actually, you know, open up, start building your own business. And of course, you can start up your proper business, you know, your real business, and you just cancel the fictional one. I mean, that is basically what I did. Okay, I just I put up a silly name and made up something stupid together with my other investors, and that was it. You know, it was actually it wasn't that difficult. But like I said, I had a really good accountant who helped me out through the whole process. And just keep in mind also, this accountant, of course, the guy who's going to represent you, of course, he's going to want, you know, a fee of this. He's going to want a percentage. So just keep that in mind, and it can vary a lot. You know, as I said, you really need to do your research, but if you really find a good accountant, one that really knows what he's doing and is absolutely trustworthy, then of course it's going to be worth it, you know. Just spend the extra cash in somebody who really takes you seriously, okay, who will really sort you out, okay. And there's one more very important thing to keep in mind. That is, if you're going to start a business, if you've already been to Brazil and you already found a place, let's say you found a really nice piece of land, you want to start up a bed and breakfast, or you want to start up a restaurant, or any sort of stuff, don't invest a single cent of your cash until everything is in order. Because if you buy that piece of land, let's say you bought it for 100,000 Brazilian reais, you know, you cannot deduct that from your $500,000 that you need to come in to invest here in Brazil, okay? So it's not like you can't show a proof of receipt, well, I already spent this is part of an investment, you know. You need to get everything sorted, everything approved, the whole process needs to be okayed, and then, and only then, can you actually start spending your money, okay? So I've seen a lot of people that made this mistake, you know. They've had the cash to come in here to Brazil to invest, and they already, you know, they bought the piece of land, they started building because they want to be ahead, okay? So they already spent a whole bunch of money, but of course, when you start the process, they're gonna see, well, where's your cash? Where's your $500,000 Brazilian reais that you need to be eligible? And unfortunately, you know, if you have capital and you know, any piece of land or real estate, anything like that, it doesn't matter. It doesn't help. It doesn't help you at all, okay? So you need to show proof of, you know, that you actually have a $500,000 Brazilian reais in hand the very moment that you start your you know, application process. So just keep that in mind, okay, guys? So basically those are the steps, okay? So basically the first, like I said, you need the money. You need at least a $500,000 reais. You need to get your CPF. That is the first thing. After that, you need to spend, this is the most critical, I cannot emphasize it enough, you need to spend a lot of time getting a reliable accountant, somebody who you absolutely trust with your life here in Brazil, who will represent you legally during the whole process, okay? This is somebody who you can feel absolutely comfortable wiring your $500,000 reais to, and you know that it's going to be in good hands, okay? That I cannot help you with, that is up to you, but that is absolutely of utmost importance, okay? After that, when you got all that sorted, then it's time for you to go to your Brazilian consulate in whatever country where you are and start the application process. It's basically as easy as that. And when you got all that sorted here in Brazil and at your consulate, everything is good to go, then you're all set. Then your adventure begins here in Brazil, okay? So I hope at least this was somewhat helpful, you know. Feel free to leave some comments in the comment section below if you have any questions, you know. I try to answer all the comments as we go, you know. I am quite busy, but I always got a few hours, you know, every now and then, and I'll sit down and read all of your comments, and I try to answer them as best as I can. So I hope this was somewhat informative, and I know there's a lot of steps. I know it can look really intimidating, but guys, follow your dreams. Like, I never regretted 1 minute coming down here and starting this adventure. I love it every single day. My business is doing great, and I hope whatever, you know, whatever you decide to do at start, I wish you all the best of luck. Okay, guys? So that's it for me in this episode. Again, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, this would be awesome. And of course, you know, feel free to subscribe to my channel if you want to hopefully get a lot more helpful content like this in the future. Okay, guys? Until next time, thanks a lot for tuning in. Take care. Ciao, ciao.